Okay, we're out live. All right, welcome everybody. This is the SPC's Fit Talks podcast. Today we are doing our first interview with Chris DeSaro. He's been a good friend of mine for years. He's a Muhlenberg student. He's pre-med. He has his own podcast, Cardinal Med. And as well, he is here to explain the differences between being a college athlete versus now a general population NARP.
No.
So basically, he's just here to explain the differences to health and fitness wise. So I thought it'd be important to kind of show the dichotomy of being an athlete versus being kind of just adjusting as a normal person. So welcome, Chris.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
No problem. No problem. This has actually been something I've been wanting to do with you for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So first off, just kind of introduce yourself, explain how you treated health and fitness up until college.
Mm-hmm.
So like how you treated health and fitness, diet and exercise specifically as a kid to college.
Mm-hmm. So I've been a track and field athlete for approximately 10 years now. It's been a huge part of my life and my identity. Before college,
you kind of cut out
in the 8th grade, and I continued it up until high school.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, it was very much, how do I phrase it? It was very much a one-track mind type of thing. I had like a very fixed set of goals in the athletic realm, and I knew how to achieve them. It was I talked to my coaches, I would look things up online, and I thought the best way to go about achieving these goals was to follow a very strict regimen of diet, of exercise. I would like to say sleep, but sadly, my life as a student didn't allow that to its optimal level. Yeah. But as I got older, I definitely think I fixed up on that. But yeah, up until college, I treated it very much as a one-track mind type of thing. I thought I could sort of juggle a million different aspects of both my fitness and personal life all put together in one. And it did work for a while. I did achieve a lot of my athletic goals. I was in very good shape, I'd like to say.
Mm-hmm.
I achieved a lot of the times I hit on the track. I was very versatile in the events I could do.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I thought I was succeeding very much as an athlete. And I guess to answer your question more directly, I treated it as just I treated it as a very, very important part of my life. And yeah, because like I said, it was a huge part of my identity and something I really loved. And I continue to do it as a hobby, so I still very much do love it.
All right, sounds good. So what was it like as specifically a college athlete?
Mm-hmm. As a college athlete, it's so I was kind of mentioning before how I kind of wanted to build this like Renaissance man image of myself, not for anyone else, but like for me, I wanted to be the type of guy who like I was a good student. I was good on the track. I was like, I had these different parts of my life that I could excel at.
Mm-hmm.
And in college, obviously, as you might imagine, it kind of upped the ante a little bit. Like school's harder, and because I'm competing on a more competitive level, the sports was harder as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot harder for me to keep up with this like jack of all trades type of thing I was trying to build for myself. And that really showed in that as a college athlete, more is expected of you. You're not like the practices are much longer. The training is very, very much more intensive.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have a more fixed training schedule, I'd say, at least in my own experience. Like in high school for me, it was very much like a mystery, I guess, as to what type of workouts and all stuff you were doing, which makes sense because, you have like 13, 14-year-olds on the team versus like 18-year-olds. And, like you have this dichotomy of maturity going on. But at college, everyone's an adult and they have much more, I don't want to call them realistic, much more like headstrong focus of like what they want.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's treated that way. And so it was just much more difficult to keep up with that type of jack of all trades aspect I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a strict diet or anything per se. Like my coach didn't say like, you have to eat this, this, and that on Monday, Tuesday, and whatever. Because much like working out as a non-athlete, it all comes down to like your interest and your willpower to succeed in your goals. You could show up to practice and do absolutely nothing, and you're not going to succeed at all. And that's not me. I don't want to waste my time and not improve. So I would, I asked Sean a lot here. I asked like other friends, looked things up online, like optimal diet, optimal like stretching routines and stuff. Like so it was very much like in college, as you might imagine, it was taken much more seriously and all that, which I very much enjoyed. I like the structure focus of it. But at the same time, it was much more difficult to keep up with other aspects of my life. So, yeah.
Okay. So you didn't feel restricted in any way?
Honestly, ironically enough, I think looking back, I was more restricted in high school, and I think it has something to do with age in a weird way. Not to sound like a 50-year-old man, but
It's okay.
I feel like, yeah, like when you're 16, 17, whatever, your body is just going through these like intense like maturations, and you're just like you're strong essentially all around because you're like growing in that way. But as you like reach into your early to mid 20s, you're like plateauing in some sense. So like you like you can kind of, what's the word? I feel like when you're even more on the young side, you could like take more of these hits than you can when you're older. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's funny in high school, like I would show up to, I would always volunteer to be like designated driver and stuff, and like just so like I wouldn't be tempted to drink, or like I would always turn away desserts and stuff like that. So oddly enough, I was much more strict in high school because like I think it's just my mindset, to be honest. But yeah, in college I was, I think, a little more loosey goosey. I'll put in.
Oh yeah, trust me, I've been friends with this guy for years. I think he just gets sick whenever he sees desserts, honestly.
Yeah,
it's really impressive how good about it is he on that. Like I remember once we went to a bakery and he like it was a bakery, and like I was picking up a cake and he's just like I almost thought he was getting sick being in there. I was like, Chris, you want anything? He's like, no.
Yeah,
I'm like,
all
right.
That's the thing. Like you ask if I feel restricted, and honestly, no, because it was the answer is no, because it was just so ingrained in my psyche that I didn't feel restricted. But like as someone looking up from the outside, you might imagine I would be.
Yeah,
it seemed pretty natural to me at the time.
Yeah, I think people think that like that because you're an athlete, you probably have like a fixed regimen. Now, training, I understand that you most definitely have, and I've talked to like at my college, I've talked to the head trainer, and like it seems like for training they always have something specific for each sport, but diet is kind of like on you for the most part. And I just wonder if that, like, as you go higher, so you were D1 or D2?
D2.
D2. Okay, so I'm not gonna say that doesn't have a factor in it, but it could probably, from what I've like done research on. Like it seems like once you get to D1, that's like the strictest they'll get. But I think in terms of just like, I think it's important that you're showing that like the diet part at least is more on you. The training is on you, but you have a specific plan, whereas diet, it's just like, it's really on you. It's like depending on it. And yeah, Chris has sent me questions before, like, oh, what should I eat now? Or like, how should I adjust things? Because I remember he texted me once before, like it was the day before a race, and he's like, what should I do? Like, what should I eat? So knowing how things work, and I know how track goes, I suggested like, I think it was carb loading. So what I want, and like, so that's kind of restrictive in a bit, where you kind of have to do things for your sport, but at the same time, I'm kind of glad he's explaining that like it's not as restrictive as some people think. That some people think that like you have this regimen, if you don't stick by it, it's like you'll get like your team will like your coach will be on your ass about it. But I'm kind of glad he's explaining it's not as much different as if you were on not on a team. It's really on you, on how good you want to be. I guess the restrictive part is being like, well, since you're on a team, the more restrictive you are, the better you are, you'll end up being better. So it's more of a mindset, I guess.
Yeah, and I thought that was very like reflective of my values at the time too. When I was like 16, 17 and all that, like I was very much all in on track and everything. I had these like wild aspirations of like going to the Olympics, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And as I got older, my values changed. I'm looking more into like careers now, like where I'm going to be living in the next few years and stuff. And I think this sort of I'll call it lessening, more of tapering of restrictions on my lifestyle were very appropriate in that I thought it was good fit for me to pursue things that I could more so do in the long term and less so as a hobby.
Yeah. It's funny though, if it's funny how, because we both did track, so it's funny how if we kind of knew what we knew now, how much better we would have been in high school. And as well, like
Yeah.
we kind of did some stupid stuff too. Like I remember we used to go like before track. We was thinking about it is actually really gross now. The night before drink we would have. I think it was like I'd drink like a half of I'd drink half a Monster and he would drink half a Mountain Dew, and then we'd combine it and we'd drink it. And I remember once we had it, and then he got home and he told me, he's like, yeah, I just did like 112 push-ups in 43 seconds. And I'm like thinking back now, I'm like, I don't think that was good. Not only because we had it the night of, which means we probably didn't get a lot of sleep, but not only that, like him doing that many push-ups the day before a race. Oh my. So
that's what I was saying before. That's what I was saying before. Like your young body can take such hits.
I know, it's like it's funny because we're still really young. Like he's 21, I'm 22. It's not like we're that old. So
yeah,
but I know what he's saying. Like especially during that time when your body's growing. So okay. So next question is: do you feel you're healthier now or as an athlete?
So it kind of depends what you mean by healthier. In a physical sense, like muscle tone, stuff like that. I'd say I guess the more obvious answer is like, man, probably not. Like I'm sure my physical body was loved when I was a full-blown athlete and everything.
I guess my question is like overall, because I remember you always talking about like you've had knee problems during track. So my point being is like overall, do you feel like your body's in a better place now or when you were doing track? So
yeah, overall. Okay. So yeah, like I was saying, the whole muscle part of it, like looking good, like being lean, stuff like that. Oh, definitely when I was an athlete. But in the more practical sense, kind of like what you're talking about. Like if for those who don't know what Sean was mentioning, I had for how long now? Maybe 3 years or something. In my track year, I had very chronic tendonitis in my right patella tendon, and it was very much exacerbated by continuous running, especially sprinting. I was a sprinter, and just the continuous pounding on the track with my knee. And it's just a product of the game. And it would me not being on track now, I don't feel any of that now, and because I've given myself a very, very lengthy amount of time to heal, and I don't put the stress back on it as often. And especially when you said that question, I immediately thought of like mental well-being as well. Because looking back to like you asked if I felt restricted again at the time, no, but looking back, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that really highlights the importance of like what we'll call cheat days and stuff. Like I mentioned before how like I'd voluntarily be like designated driver when like my friends and I would go out to like a party or whatever and have some drinks. I couldn't do that because I was very fixated on track. But looking back, like that's I was kind of like hindering like a good social experience and stuff. So I think me not putting those types of restrictions that were associated with me being an athlete on myself have made me way more healthier in the mental aspect. I'm much happier, I'd say, because I don't have to live by anyone's guidelines. I live by my own guidelines. I can run when I want, I exercise when I'd like. And I pride myself in being like pretty rational in my health. So I think that like I work out on like a healthy basis. I'm not like obsessive and I'm not neglectful by any means. So I'd say overall, I think my joints and my mind are much happier, me as a non-athlete.
Yeah, and I'm glad you've pointed that out, because this is something that I've been trying to promote myself, is just that for the general population, it's just about being healthy in the sense that like you're at a weight that is manageable. Your mobility is enough to get through the day without being super hindered. You don't have to be super strong. You don't have to be super muscular too. So I know Chris is at a relatively low weight so he looks really good. But like my point being is that like, you don't have to be where he is and you could still be healthy. So I'm glad he's also like, it's more about just keep trying to improve your body, but you're also at a point where if you're like, you know what, yeah, I'm like 15% body fat, I'm like, maybe like 5 to 10 pounds overweight, but like, overweight. But my point being is like, you don't have to be super crazy in order to be healthy. And this is what I've been promoting, and that this is what I've been trying to promote. So I'm glad Chris is pointing this out, that like, even though he was probably at a physical standpoint, he was way better, minus the injuries, just at a physical standpoint, he was probably healthier, but at the same time, now that he's less restricted on what he can do, he feels a lot better. So I'm glad he's starting to point that out, that these are things that people need to realize, especially like with the whole, and this is what I've been saying, like the whole Instagram fitness thing is just like, there's too much too high of expectations that you can say, well, it's for one reason or one reason or another. But my point being is like, just the expectations alone are just way too high for some people. Whereas all they should be focusing on is just being the healthiest person they can be. They don't have to have a six pack to be considered the healthiest person. So I'm glad he's really, what's the word? He's establishing the point that like, just because he looked really healthy and from a physical standpoint, he was probably at a better place. Now, overall, everything else is more important, and everything else now is better for him. And not to say that like, if you put some restrictions on yourself, you don't have to. It's not that you don't have to put that you shouldn't put restrictions on yourself, obviously, but you're a little more realistic with them. So I hope that kind of is what you're going for now.
And kind of going off that as an example, like back in my my heyday, I'll call it, like when I was in peak track mode or whatever, I could run a quarter mile in like 50 seconds, and even that, like, it wasn't good enough for me. I wanted to go into the like high 40s and stuff. Like, I just wanted to keep improving, which would require me like more intensive training and more dietary stuff. So I was in this like fantastic aerobic shape, but I'd wake up in the morning and I'd limp out of bed because my knee was killing me and stuff like that. And like I couldn't look forward to having like, at least I thought I couldn't. I couldn't look forward to having like some ice cream or whatever after dinner or something like that. So again, like physical standpoint, I was in my prime. Overall, I consider myself my prime now, which is what you should be, when you're in your early 20s.
Yeah, exactly.
That is what you should be after all.
I think Chris is starting to learn that and I think he knew this. I think it was just because he was so dictated on track. But I think this is what I'm trying to explain to people, is that he was a sprinter, but he's understanding now it's, in terms of just health and fitness, it's a marathon. You're trying to just do this as long as possible, and you don't have to like go super crazy, super fast, because then if you go super crazy, super fast and you hit all these goals, well, one, you don't really know how your body's going to react going this hard, this fast, but as well, like, you want to just keep it going, because then at some point, what happens if you do peak at something? And then it's like, well, what do you do now? And then that's where I think some people just kind of like let themselves go to a bit, because they don't know what to do anymore. So it's like, if you have a goal, try to stretch it out as long as possible. And I think health and fitness should be it's a lifestyle for a reason, because you're trying to do this for a lifetime. So I guess you kind of answered the next question I had, was the changes you made post track life.
I can answer that some more. I think something that, I think something I didn't do adequately when I was a very dedicated track runner was explore other aspects of health and fitness. I learned this quickly after leaving track. I was like, I've been running for like a decade, like very competitively. Running is the only form of exercise I really know. Like, I know how to, like, I could turn almost anyone into a fantastic runner just from my experience. And I could remold myself into like a good runner in the different fields of running, whether it be sprinting or long distance. But I never really knew the other types of health and fitness there could be. So I kind of quickly, after having left track, I quickly gravitated to cycling and stuff, just because it was it was not very intensive on the joints, and it was just very relaxing to me. So kind of like running. Yeah. And it is very similar to running too. So it was still in my, like,
you still get that like aerobic activity, but it's like, it really is less harder on the joints, especially the knees.
Yeah. So I guess post track life, I opened myself up more to like exploring other things that can make you healthy in your life, which I didn't think I adequately did while in track. And in addition to that, I mentioned I kind of took back the parts of my life that I was like in hindsight restricting and stuff. You know, like I like drink in a social manner now, like have a cheat day every now and then as one should.
Yeah.
You know, like I just kind of liberated my lifestyle more. And that doesn't have to come with leaving a sport or whatever. Just because you're in a sport or in a very dedicated fitness regimen or whatever doesn't mean you have to live this whole like live like a monk lifestyle or anything. Like, I was just kind of naive. So these are the changes I made post track life.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I think the changes you made sense. And my one question is, in terms of mobility and flexibility, do you think that you're better now or in terms of track? Because what I've been trying to tell people now is that mobility, like not necessarily just yoga, but just in general, stretching on a daily basis or as much as you can will help you in the long run, because you'll just be able to move around and be more mobile throughout the day, and just doing daily activities will just be easier. So do you think you're better at that now or before?
Admittedly, I've been slacking in the mobility category. That's my own fault entirely, because I should dedicate like a good 15 minutes or so every
do yoga, bro.
Yeah, I need to get into yoga.
Something. Trust me, I know you. Once you get that going, you'll probably be able to just do it daily.
Yeah, and my school offers like free yoga classes. Maybe I'll hop in on it.
That's cool. Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't been like I can still move to very practical lengths. When I say like I've been slacking, I mean like
stretching every day.
Yeah, like in my track heyday, I could almost do a split. Now, like you couldn't pay me to do a split.
I don't think. See, that's the thing. I'm not trying to say like you should be able to do a split, but like I know what you're saying. Yeah.
So I could definitely having left when I did because of like my knee injuries and stuff like that. Having left when I did, I think it has allowed me to have full range as I do now as a healthy young person. But I would like to, as you mentioned, like get into a more regulated stretch routine or yoga or something like that.
Okay. What tips do you have? And this is more geared towards what your major now. So what tips do you have for pre-med students and students in general for health and fitness? So I've given plenty of tips and whatnot. So I just want to hear stuff that you have learned through the years that could help you. And you could be as specific you want for pre-med students or as general as you want. So
I can kind of tie these together. I think think the theme of SPC and the theme of my own podcast actually is just that living life in moderation is a very, very good thing. I think living in moderation kind of gets a bad rep in that like you're kind of like an impartial like sissy, even I'll call it. Like it's like take a side type of thing.
Or just like you're living an average life. And for a lot of people, average is viewed negatively for whatever reason.
I've been exploring this, like, so I'm a neuro major, I think, as Sean mentioned, and I've been exploring like the sort of like phenomenological concept of like over romanticizing things, and that like people very much try making their life like this epic storybook tale of like big overachieving things. In that, like, if you're on a fitness goal, it's like, oh, I'm all in and like that's it. Like, and I'm gonna come out stronger because I went all in and that's the end of it. Or like on the student side, like I want to go to medical school, so I'm gonna shut myself in the books for 4 years. And I'm gonna come out as a med student, and like that's it. And there's no one ever considers like this very average middle ground that allows you to cater to different parts of your life, without kind of going overboard. Like with fitness, it's the idea of like taking a cheat day or two or during the week to like keep your mental sanity going. And as a student, it's dedicating maybe a Friday night to do no work and just kind of catch up with your friends and family and all that. I think people over romanticize the whole like going all in on things. I think because of that, they accidentally fall into a rut in their lives. So to answer both questions at once, I'd say the biggest tip I can have is to like balance is key.
Yeah, and I think that it's not necessarily living an average life. I'd say it's like you're living more comfortably, and as well you're living realistically. So when I say like real fitness, and when I say like you don't have to be super strong or super muscular. I'm not saying that like you shouldn't be always improving yourself. I'm just saying that like realistically you could set, there's realistic goals that you can set, and this idea of what a healthy person is kind of skewed. So I kind of agree with you on that like um especially for as from what you've told me, like just pre-med students in general, just people who are busy, they kind of go all in on one side of it and they don't allow themselves to be balanced with everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, like I've actually like, and I've dealt with this when I was at Oswego, and then as well now when I'm at Queens, just the difference between being a busy college student but didn't have anything else to worry about other than just college. And now it's being a busy college student, but also knowing I have to go to work and I have to, make money to commute because I'm a commuter. So I need money at all times. So now it's like, and at first I kind of had a balance. Then, and then I realized that my job was just way too, it was just way too, I was working too many hours but too many overnight hours. And what ended up happening was that I just didn't have time to dedicate the time I needed to dedicate, especially now that my courses are getting harder because it's getting closer to the end, that I needed more time to dedicate it. And yeah, I could have just worked less hours, but I still needed a certain amount of money to commute, to keep up with things, because I do have payments now and all that. And I'm starting to learn how to balance financially. But so I kind of had to make decisions now where I'm like, all right, I need to focus on not just my career, but, focusing on school and my career, because they basically line up the same way. So I found a way to now make money with not working ridiculous hours and getting home at like 4:30 in the morning. Because then it would be like Friday night, I'd work from 5 to 4 in the morning. And then it's like, I have the choice of what? Sleeping for like 5 hours and then doing work when I'm dead tired and I'm physically just exhausted, and then I have to go to work again. Or I sleep through the whole day, so I'm not physically exhausted for work again, but then I didn't do any work, so I basically gave up a whole day. So then it became a weird balance. And I kind of forced myself at some point to just take the 5 hour, just take that hit of just getting not enough sleep. But that started to just accumulate to a point where physically I was exhausted. Mentally, I was just starting to like just get mentally exhausted. And so I had to make a personal decision that my life isn't balanced anymore. I have to make this decision. So that's where I made some changes now in my life where I actually feel a lot better because I'm just way more balanced. And as well, the problem was the job I was working didn't allow me to fully focus on health and fitness because I work at a restaurant. And the problem is that, like I say to people, one of my nutrition tips is that if you're not surrounded by food that you're tempted to eat, you're most likely not going to have it. And that was my biggest problem. And you could say, oh, well, you weren't mentally strong enough. I was to an extent, but you got to understand, working from 5 to 4, even if I had a healthy dinner at like, let's just say 8 o'clock, I'm still up past the time I would have been sleeping. So at like 3 o'clock in the morning, you're going to have a craving, and it's just easier at that point. And you're just so exhausted at that point that you're just like, whatever, I earned this. So it's just, now that I'm not doing that, I'm able to just live a more balanced life. So I'm glad Chris is really reiterating this, that just like being balanced isn't a negative thing. If anything, it's healthier for the long run. And you could still find ways to improve yourself. There's always ways to challenge yourself without going overboard.
It's funny. I remember, so I watch Nick Simmons. He's a former Olympian, and he ran competitively at the Olympic and professional level for like a decade, which is.
What did he run?
Like, he ran the 800 meters,
Oof.
And he ran like
Yikes.
5 times longer than most professional athletes do because he was very big on balancing your life and everything. And I remember he had a really big race the next day, and on Instagram, he was the first person to post like a story of him drinking a beer, and he's just like, just how he's like, this one beer is not going to kill me, and I just kind of want it. And so it's like this kind of moderation he's been living. He cites as the reason he's been able to elongate his career for so long. a side story about that. He also he talks a lot about like the type of athletes or whatever that impress him. And he's like, he's as being Nick Simmons, he's seen like the greats of the greats. He's like raced the best in the world and everything. And he says that doesn't impress him. Like people who run top in the world, that doesn't impress him. What impresses him is like the average like person who works a 9 to 5 and can get in their run and be able to train for like a half marathon or a 5K, like still have these like very admirable athletic goals and live like their whole side life. He says that like he was grateful and that his professional career was running and that allowed him to achieve these great accolades. He went to the Olympics, he was a world champion. But that was because his job was running. He was paid to run. He worked out like multiple times a day because that was his life. But that's not everyone's life. They have other parts, like you said, work, people have school. And he said like he admires most of the people who can do that, like have these like realistic parts of their life that like a lot more common than not people have, and also achieve these athletic feats that could be anywhere from like running a 5K to running a full marathon to just going to the gym 4 times a week. So that's what he said impresses him most, and I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that too. That finding a balance is really hard, but as well, it's probably the most important thing. And that's really cool that an Olympic athlete's just like, yeah, I want a beer, so I'm gonna have it. I don't even care. That's pretty cool. So I guess final question is, what are your goals, health and fitness wise, for the future? So what do you plan on doing in that field?
I really want to run a marathon one day. I'm very far from that, but what's it called? That'd be super cool.
Sprinting down to the ultimate long distance.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of change it up. So that's pretty far fetched at the moment. I'm not very much the long distance guy at the moment. That's a goal of mine, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I was a sprinter in high school as well. So, and now I'm like doing mile runs all the time. So I kind of understand that. It's a weird difference.
But like, I guess the more, I'll call it realistic for now because I'm just not at marathon shape at the moment. I want to get on a good like few miles run, like 4 times a week or so, as I progress in the future and like eventually go to medical school, become a like doctor, whatever. I still want to keep up with these other parts of my life. I think as you get older, some people like put fitness on the back burner. I don't want to do that for a lot of reasons. One, it's just not healthy for you, and 2, because I find it kind of meditative, like going for a nice long run, just like you and yourself. So I find it kind of nice. So big goals to be consistent in my fitness goals, be more open to exploring. Like I mentioned, like I really like cycling and stuff. I want to get into hiking and stuff like that. To be consistent and to be open-minded. Those are my 2 goals.
Okay, that's very admirable. Do you have any like, in terms of just like muscular fitness goals? Do you have anything like do you want to like grow? What's the word? Do you have any hypertrophy goals? Do you like want to like? Is there a specific area on your body that like you want to improve, or is there just like do you want like overall a more bigger or more muscular body?
Honestly, not really. I go through like these cycles of wanting like big pecs and stuff, like big biceps, like those types of like
I got you. Bodybuilding goals.
Like bodybuilding.
Even though they're not realistic at all.
Yeah, I mean, like some people they can do it, and that's good for them. I'm just not willing to make the sacrifices personally.
Gotcha.
So to answer your question directly, no. I guess I want to just keep my muscles in like good shape. I don't want them to like atrophy over time. I just want to keep them together and keep up with my cardio.
That's good. Okay. So if you want to, you can shout out your podcast and whatnot and explain what it is.
Yeah, why not? So I hold a podcast over on Spotify and Apple Podcast called Cardinal Med. That's one word. Cardinal like the bird. And it's a whole podcast dedicated to helping pre-meds and students overall like navigate the weeds of an intensive like high school and college curriculum. It's very much geared towards pre-meds in that like we talk a lot about what it's like to be pre-med, like studying for the MCAT, stuff like that, application process stuff is coming out in the future. If you're pre-med, you find yourself kind of confused as to what routes to take and how to best optimize your time as a student, check it out. It's both on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, like I mentioned.
Yeah, guys, I've listened to it. He's really good. He's had some really interesting interviews, as well. Like his first couple are just him, and he's had really some really good just tips in general, and just also just really good podcasts. So go out and listen. That's Cardinal Med, one word. Cardinal like the bird, and he's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You're on all the platforms, right?
Yeah, the old big ones.
Okay. All right. So this was SBC's Fit Talk podcast signing out.